All right, so today we're gonna replace an interior door. So the first thing we need to do, obviously, is get the old door out. So one of the first things we do when we remove a door is we're gonna go around all the molding and we're gonna cut between the drywall or the finished wall and the trim. The reason why is when you pull the trim off, if you don't do that, you could possibly rip the wall and make your job even bigger. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go around and we're gonna knock the hinges out. You could use a punch or a very small screwdriver that you don't care about because you could possibly mess it up. And we're gonna go to the bottom of the hinge and we're just gonna hit all of the hinges. Now we need to remove this frame. So we're just gonna start using a pry bar inside. All right, so now we got the old door out. Now we're gonna get to the point of putting the new door in, okay? So the first couple things we're gonna do is make sure that there's no nails, nothing sticking out in the framing, especially on the hinge side. Then we're gonna check our new door. So I just brought this in. Make sure there's nothing, no packaging, no screws sticking out. Now we're gonna talk about what tools do we need to install this, okay? Or what supplies, all right? So we're gonna start with shims. So I would get a pack of shims per door. Trim screws. These are GRK. They're actually trim screws. You get them in Home Depot, Lowe's, get 2.5 inches. I would get the longest trim screws you can get. Then we're gonna need levels, okay, to make sure everything's plumb. You can use a 4-foot level, okay? So I would recommend at least a 4-foot level for this. I also have a staple gun. This could be used in place of the nail gun. And today I'm gonna use a nail gun, but you can also use a stapler. You'll see why. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna assess this hinge side. We're gonna see how plumb this is. And this is where my technique kind of differs from others. I'm actually going to plumb this up first. All right, so let me put my level on here. This is where a 6-foot level really comes into play. And we can see, without manipulating, without any manipulation, this is definitely out of plumb. So how are we gonna plumb that up? We're gonna use shims, okay? This is where the staple gun will come into play. But in my case, I'm gonna use a nail gun, but you can use a staple gun. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna figure out how do I plumb this. So if I come out up here, okay, if you look here, you can see if I have these shims in there, it's perfectly plumb, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna attach these shims to the framing. Like I said, you can use a staple gun for this. Now what I need to do is work my way down, and where the next hinge goes, I need to add some shims there. So right here, we're gonna add some shims, which you can see there's a gap there. All right, so you can see my shims are installed. I don't need a shim down there, okay? Very important, when you're installing shims, so a shim has a skinny side and a fat side. So you always wanna make sure whenever you're shimming something, you're bringing the 2 skinny sides together, okay? Like this. The reason why is that you're gonna have a flat surface. You never wanna just put a shim in like this because then you have, of course, an angled surface and that's gonna make installation hard. Now that we know that this is plumb, we actually don't have to think about this anymore, okay? So let's look at the bottom and see how our floor is lying. How do we assess the floor? So we put a level in there and we're just gonna look. And if I look down here, I can see that this floor is out. This side actually needs to come up by that much. Now, look at the gap there. That's not a lot. Are you gonna see that ever? Especially considering that this is a closet. This is not a walk-through, like into a bedroom or something like that. If it was any higher than that, so let's say we needed to come up like a 1/4 inch. Let's just pretend. So let's say that's what made it level. So this floor was actually out by a 1/4 inch. What that would mean is that you would have to put a 1/4 inch shim down here, okay? Or you take a 1/4 inch off of the other side with some kind of saw. So you would just cut a 1/4 inch off the bottom, okay? What that would do is bring it down. That would actually level the door. Okay. So I'm not gonna do that in this video. There's a video on this old house. He shows you exactly how to do that, what I'm talking about, cutting it. It's a little confusing, but it's not that bad. So in this case, since it's only like less than 1/8 of an inch out, I'm gonna go directly to the ground and I'm just gonna add a shim to the hinge side, okay? The reason why I'm adding a shim to this side, because to make this level, I need to bring this side up. So now we're gonna move on to actually putting the door into the open. sure that this piece of the door, the piece of the framing, is perfectly flush or on the same plane as the drywall. Okay, so the one way I can guarantee that is I take a piece of wood and I can screw it in this case I nailed it into the corner here, and this is actually holding the door where it needs to be. All right, now let's attach the hinge side to the framing. We're gonna use our trim screws with the small head, and we're just gonna start from the bottom and screw this in. All right, so we are going to go, we're gonna put 3 screws on this. So we're gonna put one where this hinge is, one where this hinge is, right where the shims are, and one where the top is, okay? So we're gonna go right in, we're gonna go through this piece, this middle piece here, and no worry, this is a small screw. All right, at this point, the door is hung. So now what we're gonna do is we are going to work on our reveals. Now you can see that reveal at the top, like I said. See how perfect it is? That is because we shimmed it up just a little bit on the bottom, and I'll show you how small that gap is. It's literally as thin as a shim. So if it was any higher, if it was like a 1/4 inch out, we'd have to cut a 1/4 inch off this one. Now that the hinges are installed, now it's a matter of basically just going around this piece and moving it and manipulating it back and forth using shim and making sure the reveal is the same. Now what I do is I always start at the top because this is a set distance. You can't manipulate this anymore. You don't want to start at the bottom. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set this one in, we're gonna shim this in, and then we're gonna work our way down the door all the way to the bottom, making sure that with our eye, the reveal is the same. All right, so now we got all of our shims in. The reveal looks good. It's the same all the way. Now we're just gonna drive everything home with our screws. So the next step is to get rid of all of these shims. Okay, so usually what you can do, not a big fan of it, you take your X-Acto knife and you make a bunch of cuts in it, a couple cuts, and then you break it off. I don't prefer that way. I actually prefer to use my oscillating tool. I go from finished side to unfinished side, and I kind of go in on an angle. All right, so for all intents and purposes, this door is hung. It needs a coat of paint. We need to fill these nail holes. We could just use some wood filler, doesn't matter, whatever your favorite wood filler is. We also need to case this door, okay? If you wanna see how to do that, please hit the subscribe button. I have hundreds of videos out there on how to do all this kind of home renovation DIY stuff, and I like to help people. So I hope this helped you. If it did, please hit the subscribe button. I'm Mike, Family DIY TV, and I'm out.